All right, folks, we're going to liven it up. Good morning, Verdexchange. We have a great panel here, and I'm going to introduce them to you, if you don't already know them, very shortly. But you know, the impetus for this panel, David and I talked, and I said, I want to do this panel. I really feel like we need it, because I don't think anyone here today would disagree with the notion that this has been a tumultuous few months for our country. Some of the most game-changing, rule-changing months I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm pretty old. And especially here in California and in other firmly blue states that I deal with, I've heard a lot of what I must respectfully call wailing. But my proposition for you here this morning is that it is what it is. America has voted, and as policymakers and as thought leaders, all of you, whichever side of the aisle you're on, we have a mission to those we serve, to make lemonade. It's really what it's about. To take advantage of those things that are happening that we view as good, and figure out how to work through the things we view as bad. And this panel brings together nationally recognized leaders that have been in the trenches, understand where we've been, where we're likely headed. I've asked them to be candid and specific in their remarks without political rhetoric, and focus on how we make the new world work as well as we can. Inaction will not help anyone on either side of the issues, nor will simply grieving about the latest executive order or the latest court injunction blocking an executive order. We need clarity, realism, and plans for the next 4 years and maybe more, both for California and the rest of our country. And our panel today can help us understand that. Let me briefly tell you who we have. You know most of them. Down at the far end is Marty Adams. Marty is currently the LA County Blue Ribbon, member of the LA County Blue Ribbon Commission on Climate Action and Fire Safe Recovery, but he recently retired, as most of you know, as the General Manager and Chief Engineer of LADWP. And Marty's been at Verde from the beginning, I think. And sitting immediately next to Marty is Doreen Harris. And Doreen is visiting us from a little bit far away, right? She is president and CEO of the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, and has helped them to advance policy frameworks, clean energy technologies, and solutions that help New York advance towards climate leadership. And all of these folks have very long bios, so I'll go quickly. And I think you all know David Hochschild, who is the chair of the California Energy Commission, has spent his entire career working on issues directly impacting our environment. He does more than that too, but I mean, he's been an environmental champion from day one and a supporter very much of Verdexchange. And right here next to me, this character is Gene Rodrigues. Gene is the immediate past Deputy Secretary at DOE, responsible for electricity issues. Gene's been a friend for a lot of years. And a little bit of inside baseball about Gene. Gene is also a member of a World Championship Masters volleyball team. So this guy's got hops. You wouldn't know it, but he does. So panelists, we're giving you each a little time to talk about this issue and your view on it. Who wants to go first? Okay. Well, go ahead, Marty. You're not shy.
My downfall, not shy. So this is like the most loaded panel, I think, of the day. Not in terms of us loaded, but in terms of loaded question. So good morning. It's great to see everybody. When Jim called about this panel, I don't know about the other panelists, we're kind of like, oh my gosh, how do I keep my feet and my mouth apart from each other? And we're not talking about projects, we're talking about speculation. So just real quickly, a couple of things that I see. I mean, obviously, we are, seeing the pendulum do a complete swing in our lives and across the country. To me, it's kind of a shock and awe moment. It's only been a few months. And I think that one thing we know is that at some point in time, things will settle down and the pendulum will kind of swing back to something that actually is workable and something that we more recognize, and we'll be able to continue business a lot more normally than what we think right now. So one of my thoughts is that it's hard not to panic, but I'd say don't panic, because things have to move. What do we know in California? We know that California is still going to have to feed the country. We're still going to have production. We're still going to have to drive the economy. We're still going to be the key of innovation in the country, and that won't change. I think we're taking a little bit of a beating right now, but I think it's going to have to get back to something close to normal for us. I see things that are actually some opportunities that we have right now. I sit on the National Infrastructure Advisory Council to the president. At least we think we still sit on it. We don't know yet, but we'll find out. Although President Trump used the council the last time he was president, and some of the same members were on it when I was just on it, and a couple things were interesting. We actually did a couple studies. One was on transformer shortage, which everybody in power business here knows about. And this was an issue during his first administration, was things being made in America and parts from overseas. That could be spyware in transformers. The NIAC did a study, and what we don't make in America is shocking. And so I think there's actually opportunities to look at what can be manufactured here. That's a complete synergy over the last decade that will continue right now into the new administration. I go look at the minerals and just the emphasis on minerals in the world. Part of the transformer problem is finding laminar steel, and the fact that people have got it locked up. And so how do we play in that environment? We did a study on FEMA and problems with FEMA, and FEMA's obviously not perfect. People say, is FEMA going to go away? Well, Texas, Louisiana, and Florida are the biggest recipients of FEMA money. So you tell me if it's going to go away or not. So, but FEMA needs help, and it needs some reform. And that was something that was recognized in the last 4 years. It's something I think is obviously recognized now. So I think that not everything has changed as much as you think. I think there are some things that will continue, that'll be opportunities, and it's just how do we tweak ourselves and to fit into play in that world.
Awesome. Thank you, Marty. Doreen, what do you think?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm the only one who is very chipper this morning. I'm on East Coast time, so thanks for having me here today. It was a real honor to be invited. As you see, I represent the state of New York. NYSERDA is the state's clean energy agency. NYSERDA is actually celebrating its 50th year this year. We were formed in 1975 in response to the oil and energy crisis of the 70s, really working to advance many of the same principles that are still present today with respect to our energy security as a state, the utilization of technologies to minimize our use of energy, et cetera. So I'd say it's a fitting year to be reflecting on those 5 decades and, of course, the environment in which we are working today. However, I am here to tell you NYSERDA was actually reconstituted from the state's Atomic and Space Development Authority. So what is old is new. There's lots of things that we talk about today that are actually quite similar to that which we focused on before we were formed. All that to say, NYSERDA has served under 9 U.S. presidents, even more U.S. Congresses, and ultimately we very much need to think about the long game in all that we do, and the ways in which the states, or as it is known, the subnationals, can continue to provide what is absolutely necessary to build markets, which is policy certainty. And in the face of federal uncertainty, I know I speak for myself, and I'm sure you'll hear the same from the chair, that is one of the things that we are here to do, is to stay the course and to advance policies that are durable and investable, certainly allowing these markets to continue to grow. New York has very ambitious climate agenda, very ambitious clean energy agenda, and it is absolutely true that this federal administration has challenged very, I'd say, significant aspects of that agenda, something that day in and day out we're working to navigate. And part of our job is to really plan for multiple futures. That's why when we think about scenario planning, that's why we have to conduct long-range planning, because in the near term, there is uncertainty with respect to the resources that we will have available to us to meet not only those goals, but the reliable and affordable grid of the future that is really part of our mission. And so I looked very carefully in the early days of the administration for these, for the lemonade, right? I'm looking for it. And there are bright spots. There's areas of alignment. Certainly, Secretary Wright offered, I think, some very early points of alignment that we as a state are really looking to build upon. We know the state of New York will have a highly renewable, highly electrified system writ large into the coming decades. But we also know there's a large number of resources that will necessarily complement those renewables and that electrified future. And that's an area we're really looking to build upon. We see resources like advanced nuclear technologies, something we're working on as a state. I can talk more about that later. Advanced geothermal technologies, certainly other grid enhancing technologies and the like that we see as necessary complements, and those in which we saw alignment, certainly from the Department of Energy and the leadership there in the early days. So one thing you should know is NYSERDA has the word research and development in our title, our organization's title. Like innovation, I think, is an area where we're going to have a lot of alignment with this administration, and something that I'm very much looking forward to advancing. So I can build on all of this, but there are areas certainly to see that lemonade taking shape, but more to come for sure.
Thank you, Doreen. David,
All
tell
right.
us what you think.
Well, good morning and happy 50th birthday. It's actually the Energy Commission's 50th as well, so I think we're looking pretty good for 50. Look, I just want to say at the outset here, while President Trump has obviously served a term in office before, there's some stuff happening now that is totally unprecedented. This is the worst economic performance of any presidency in American history. The market's lost $11 trillion since Inauguration Day, and I don't know what that number is going to be at the end of this panel discussion, but it's not trending well. And there is a form of arson happening with our public agencies, which we desperately need. So it's a steep hill to climb, but with the energy transition, it's really important to recognize we have a lot of power at the state level. Actually, most of the decisions that really matter for the energy transition are still made at the state level. And I just want to share, to your point, Jim, and the comments earlier this morning, we have come a long way, all right? So this year in California, we expect to hit 2/3 of our electricity on the grid coming from clean sources. Alternative energy is the wrong word to use to describe renewables. And the electrification of almost everything is underway. We're adding 1,300 electric vehicles a day. We have more electric vehicle charge plugs than we have gasoline nozzles in California today. And we're seeing all of these firsts happen. The first all-electric school bus fleet in North America just got deployed in Oakland, 74 buses, 74 chargers. 100% of the kids going to school in Oakland on a public school bus are going electric. The first all-electric police fleet right here, South Pasadena. The first electric tugboat in the world just started up in San Diego. We're seeing electric aviation even. Joby and Archer are launching now. And even heavy-duty trucking. Just in Long Beach 2 months ago, we dedicated the world's largest port-based heavy-duty trucking charging depot. And a lot of good stuff is happening. The building sector as well. We went from 1% of new construction being all electric 5 years ago. This year, 82%, right? So we got to keep that momentum going. And to recall that during the first Trump administration, which that campaign, if you recall, he ran largely on coal, all right, 2016. Well, what happened? We went from 52% coal to 16% in our portfolio nationally. We got more done, I think, on climate in that 4-year period than any other I can remember. That's when we adopted the 100% clean energy law. It's when the governor adopted his 100% executive order for zero emission transportation. It's when we did the solar on new construction. It's when we laid the seeds for what was ultimately a $50 billion state budget investment in climate solutions. And we're not getting attacked for this stuff because we're losing. We're getting attacked because we're winning. And, last year on the electric grid nationwide, 96% of capacity additions on the grid in the United States were clean energy, right? And so, and I think that is an incredibly exciting and incredibly underreported milestone, because it is the basis for so much of the decarbonization still to come. So I think we got to strengthen our spine and lean into this transition. It is happening, and it's happening everywhere. China just hit 45% of vehicle sales being electric. Norway next year is going to be the first country in the world to get to 100% electric vehicle sales for new vehicle sales. So incredible transition happening, but we need to make sure that collectively we protect American leadership in this space. And I do think there are areas where we can work together with the Trump administration. I would say like lithium recovery is a great possibility. We have enough lithium in California to support electric vehicle batteries for 375 million vehicles. And that's, I think, a common cause. And we will absolutely extend the hand in good faith to work together where we can, in every way that we can. But we got to hold out, collectively our vision, and just lean into it and know that we can make it through storms. And I'll just close with this. I was in the solar industry in Silicon Valley, when Solyndra happened, and people were ready to hold a funeral for the solar industry, and that was it, right? And what has happened since then is solar has gone. In 2004, it took a year to build a gigawatt of solar globally. In 2010, it took a month. 2016, it took a week. 2023, it took a day. 2024, half a day. It's now the single largest investment on the global electric grid in the world. It's in excess of $500 billion a year. And so I think it's important to recognize sometimes when people declare, that the transition's over, it's actually just beginning.
Thank you, David. Well, Gino, take us home on this. You lived in the federal situation for 4 years, and you survived. So give us your perspective.
I did, and I will only serve as a human highlighter pen for what the other panelists have said. But let's be clear about one thing in this room. This is a room filled with market makers. So we are not in the passive sense of making lemonade from whatever Washington, D.C. hands down to us. That is not the role of everyone in this room. Let us recognize, as the rest of the free world will, that the real leadership, both in thought leadership and in action, is not going to be coming from Washington, D.C. in the near future. In fact, it will be coming from the states, from local governments, and from the utilities who are truly trying to work on not just climate issues, but reliability, resilience, security, and affordability of the energy system that is a foundation of everything from our economy to our health, safety, and well-being, and to our leadership on the global stage. So if that is the case, and we own and recognize, apologies for the folks who are on this side of the room, and we own that responsibility, as these folks are just telling you, then we must think of two things. Number one, around policy, let us own the fact that collaboration and cooperation with DC is absolutely necessary. We are one country. But it is going to be the states. It is going to be the states, the leadership of the states, the agencies of the states, that are going to be driving the policy ideas, the policy agenda that are absolutely necessary in a world where the electric system is transitioning, and not just because of climate, but because the demand for electricity is growing in a pace and a scale that requires modernization of the electric grid, which also provides the opportunity for cleaning the electric system. Right here in California, right here in Los Angeles, we have electric utilities who are being recognized as the most sustainable in the country. We have electric utilities that are the largest electric standalone utility in the country that are driving electrification policies that make sense for the pocketbook and for the planet. We have the largest natural gas distribution utility that is leaning in on decarbonization for the state. That is the type of leadership not just of thought, but of action, that is going to make a difference in a transitioning world. And I think the folks in this room need to not just take advantage of it, but I think we need to all heed David's words here, and we need to lean in, and maybe even lean in a little harder than we have in the past.
I told you the dude had hops, right? Well, thank you, panelists. David, I know we're a little behind. Can we do some audience Q&A now? We've got runners who are going to be going around with a microphone. So, folks, this is your chance. Put your hand up and somebody will come your way. We have one over there. We have a mic back there.
Just project.
I could yell.
Yeah.
Okay, yell.
Great. I wanted to ask specifically to Gene, but any other input. A lot of the rural areas of the state, one of the big challenges has been grid reliability in terms of fire risk, economic development. DOE's had a lot of GRIP grants that are available we've been applying for. I'm wondering if you look into the crystal ball under a Trump administration, do we see investments like that which may be supporting renewable energy and technologies, but also just basic infrastructure continuing? Or do you see those types of cuts or the programs being cut as well?
That's a wonderful question, and I think a very important question. Let us recognize that there are really two Americas when it comes to the electric grid, but they share one problem, and that is the fact that America's electric grid, for being the envy of the world that it's been for decades and decades and decades and decades now, was built on 19th century engineering principles and 20th century technology. And when it comes to the rural electric co-ops, those parts of the country where they have not had the opportunity to do a tremendous amount of investment in not just people say grid modernization, it's really just updating the grid to keep up with the demands of today. There are areas in this country where the stability of the grid is challenged not just by growing demands for energy, but by the fact that, here's a T&D guy, he'll understand this, butt rot is a problem in America.
Yes.
I like to use that because it gives when you say something kind of nasty, but the idea is...
Sometimes here, too, when these go too long, Gene.
But the idea is we have a grid in this country that's built the baby boomer generation and is now aging out. So your question specifically about funding from DC, my resignation was gleefully accepted on January 20, so I have no say in what's going to happen there. But I will argue the point that is this. Most of the money from the Biden-Harris administration from these grant programs went to red states. Not because of politics, but because of need. I would hope that this the current administration, which does believe in the need for reliability, resilience, security, and affordability, will continue to understand that investment, especially in the rural electric co-op space, is absolutely necessary, not for politics, but for the physics of the grid. We need to keep a stable grid.
Indeed. Thank you. We have one here.
A similar question, this would be for Marty or David or anyone who wants to talk on it. We've talked a lot about the growth in generation and renewables, and that's a great thing. But the grid itself needs to be able to be more nimble and expand. We have both the intermittency of renewables, which creates some unpredictable power flows. We have new load coming from electrification of transportation and building loads. So it's a totally new grid. And that's a cost burden, but how can we do that most cost effectively? Even with current rate base, whether we get federal funding or not. Can we, it's not just getting new generation, it's making the grid be resilient. Any thoughts?
I can speak to that. And first, let me just say, I see in the corner there my colleague and friend, Vice Chair Siva Gunda, who's the lead for grid reliability at the Energy Commission. And I do want to just share one big success story we've had. As you recall, we had outages on August 14th and 15th of 2020 And our commitment was never again. And so we have now added 27 gigawatts of new capacity since Gavin Newsom was governor. It's a state record, and half of that, a little over 13 gigs, is energy storage. And so last summer, we got through the highest temperature in the history of the state, highest load in the history of the state. And not only did we not have rotating outages, we didn't even have a flex alert, right? So that is moving the right direction. But you're absolutely right. One of the things that will help a lot is load flexibility. And so we've established a 7 gigawatt load flex goal. We have a summit on that next month, right, at UC Davis. And we got to lean into that. And we got to be a lot smarter on, and I still think we're punching way below our weight on that. But with new technology and also with more electrification of heat pumps and all the rest, you actually have that ability to manipulate demand much better than we've ever had in the past.
Good, thank you. I'm going to try to get, can I get one more in? One more, okay, David says one more. Back there.
I'll try to be loud as well. So my firm advises European plants that have the business in the U.S. We've been extremely busy since the day after the election, when I couldn't find a black day in the office. But when it comes to renewable energy, I represent all the windmills that are out in Bend, as for exchange windmills. But what would you tell me to tell Europeans now, and the Canadians for that matter, who have been our best friends for at least 8 years?
I'd say from New York's perspective, we've interacted. Denmark's the perfect example of a country that very much influenced our offshore wind policy, and I would say is now having very major implications on that very policy, the federal policy that we're dealing with today. So you've heard the states say this, like, we're not going anywhere. We're standing firm with respect to our needs and also the value that these assets will provide. We need a diverse set of assets, really, moving forward. I think that's the key for all of us, planners and policymakers, is to bring forward myriad resources that will collectively achieve these outcomes that we seek. But it is absolutely true in the near term. The implications of the federal policy are having impacts for us as a state, and we have to be clear-eyed about those impacts for sure. I'd say for us, and certainly in specific, our interactions with the Canadians with respect to imports, a huge amount of Canadian hydro is imported into New York's market every year. We have a major 339-mile transmission line being built right now that is bringing renewables into New York City. And specific to the offshore wind industry, we've got a major contract with Ørsted that is moving forward now into construction in the offshore wind context. So all that to say, the key of this is really how to integrate our markets more fully, both from the perspective of the value that they bring, but also, frankly, the supply chain that can be applied. I've always made crystal clear to our colleagues in Europe that these issues will become local. They always become local, and ultimately being integrated with these local economies will also be central to the long-term success. We obviously see this in the federal context today, but it has always been true, right? That we are looking for things beyond the generation. We're looking for the establishment of these industries in our markets as well, and I would give that strong advice to anyone looking, certainly in the next 4 years, but as a general matter, to create that durability necessary to advance the resource writ large.
Thank you. Well,
Okay, I guess a second.
if you go quick.
Go real quick. The one thing we don't know is that, what does made in America mean? Does it mean assembled in America? Every part comes from America? I mean, obviously there's some things that are going to come from everywhere. And so we don't know what the definition of that's going to be. But I think, to David's point, we need to stay the course. And we need to drive what we think, what we've been working on and continue to think needs to happen. And I think that, a lot of this stuff's going to pan out over time. We're not going to know all the answers right up front, but I think the most important thing is to keep doing what we believe is the right thing and follow that path. And where there's opportunities in the U.S. to do more manufacturing or more assembly, take advantage of those, because we know it'll still be a worldwide process, in putting things together.
Thank you, Marty. Well, Folks, unfortunately, we are out of time. I wish we had a lot longer. I hope you do too. Thank you for your attention. Would you join me in thanking our panelists?